Hello everyone and welcome back to the CypherSec channel. In this video we are gonna be going over the jamming project from Codecademy, and we are gonna be going over the updated version of the jamming project. I have already done a video on this project. It was using class components instead of functional components in JavaScript or in React. As you guys can see, we have very limited information as how to go ahead with this project. So I have provided all the 99 steps that we had previously for completing this project. So you guys can access this by going over to my GitHub page for this project. I'll be putting that in the first link in this video's description. And without further ado, let's get started. First of all, we are gonna create a new React application. For that, we will run this command npx create react app and followed by the name that we want to give it. And here, as you guys can see, we were using a capital letter at the start. So as you guys can see, I have already run that command and I already have those files. So if you guys run this command, you should have these files in your directory. And after that, you should cd into that directory. After that, you can run npm start. If that didn't work, first of all, you should install all the dependencies by running npm install, and after that npm start, and you should be in this screen. After this, we are gonna open our directory inside VS Code. You guys can follow along using this link, and this is the readme file. The next step is updating the title value to jamming. So inside our index.html, we are gonna update the title value to jamming. After that, we are gonna remove app.test and the logo.svg file from our src directory. Let's also remove these comments from index.html. Now we are gonna create a reset.css file inside the public directory. Here we are gonna use the graphical user interface. We can also use the command line interface as well for the terminal. And we are gonna add reset.css code that I have provided in this link. You guys can copy this link by clicking this button and pasting it inside the reset.css file. After this, we are gonna link it inside our index.html file. Link the file here and set the href to the file's path inside our directory. After doing that, we are gonna link the following font, so we can go to fonts.google.com and search for Poppins. We are gonna select this one, the regular one here. We can select it here and make sure that only 400 is selected and paste the link inside the index.html head tag. You guys can open the preview by right-clicking the readme file inside your VS Code. Step number 7 is updating the favicon image with this one. So here we are going to replace this href with the one inside the readme file, which is this one, and we are going to copy the link and go back to the href of the icon and replace it with that one. This step is also done. So section number 2 is creating static components for all of our components. This one is already done. As said here, if you guys used create react app like I did, we don't need to do anything. It's already set. So creating static components, we are going to create static components for all these we can say components. So we are going to go to our src or source directory, and inside that we are gonna create directories for all of the our components. First one is app. We should move the app.js and app.css inside the app component directory that we have just created. And now we can create for all of the other components, which are search bar, search results, playlist, TrackList, and track, I believe. For now, we only need to create these, and we also need to create a .js and .module.css files as well for all these. Previously, we only used .css file, but this is a newer practice to use .module.css file. So we are gonna use the newer version and find and create .js and .css files for all these components, and you guys' files should be the same as this one. Okay, so these are the code that we need to add inside our .js file, and this one is for .module.css files. You guys can click on these and copy and paste them inside the respective files for the components. I have already provided them inside a templates directory. So after doing that, we are gonna create a src directory to hold the components. So we will move all our components that we just added inside the src directory to a newly created directory called components, and we are gonna use our finder here and go to the src directory and move all of the components inside the component directory as it should be. Move this here, and if you go back to VS Code, you guys should see them be inside the components directory. After this one, we are gonna create a directory called app. We already did that. We already have the move the app.js and app.module.css files there, and we should also update the path inside index.js to the new path which was inside the components and inside a directory called app. So we will update this path to include that as well. So for that, we need to go inside the same directory. The components is inside the same directory as index.js. See on the left, inside components, we have the app directory, and inside app, we all automatically have the app.js file as well. Now we are gonna add that image, the background image from this link. We can save this image and move it to our project folder by moving it from downloads folder to our src components app. We are gonna move it inside our app directory because it's gonna be used by the app.module.css. So we can update the URL to include the image inside our directory. After that, we are gonna return a JSX with this template code. As I mentioned before, they are all gonna be present inside a directory called template. And you guys can update your app.js file from this. These code are gonna be present inside the GitHub. We are gonna add the CSS as well. Import app.module.css into app.js. We haven't done that so far. App.js file, we can import styles from module.css. This is the new way to import. And as you guys can see, our h1 tag is already given some style. Now we need to wrap the class name inside curly braces. So in order to make the styles available, and as you guys can see, the m's inside the jamming are given some style. Wrap them inside curly braces and use styles dot followed by the name of the class. And as you guys can see here, we cannot use dot notation in class names which use hyphens or some special characters. So we need to wrap them inside quotation marks and get them inside square brackets, and then it will work. So here we should paste the template code inside other files or other components as well. Here we are gonna import the module.css file for search bar as well and update the class names as well. Here we are gonna wrap them in curly braces. We have already done these as well. We do not need to change anything for now. So we have already added this CSS as well. We have imported searchbar.module as you guys saw earlier. So the next step is for search results. Search results is already done. We need to add the CSS file to our search results. So let's do that. We are gonna import styles from search results. This is the new syntax to import module.css file and update the class name as well. Okay, create playlist directory. We already have the playlist directory and we also have the HTML code inside it as well. So set the playlist to default value, the new playlist value. So we are gonna use the default value with camel casing and set it to new playlist. Import our module.css file and update the class name as well as the playlist dash save. So as I said earlier, we have a hyphen there. So we should use style, and playlist save should be inside square brackets and wrapped in quotations. So we are going to create TrackList directory, tracklist.js, tracklist.module.css. We already did that before. We just need to import the CSS file inside it. For now, it says we should hardcode 3 values. We don't need to hardcode 3 values, but for the sake of this video, I'm gonna just write some track names, track 2, track 3, and we will later render a track component inside this track list component. For now, we are gonna remove the track and leave it as it is, and we are gonna import the TrackList CSS file. After that, we are gonna update the class name as well. Inside the track.js, we are gonna do the same as we did for all the other ones, and we should write a method called renderAction that does the following. First, we need to import the CSS file and update the class name as well. Wrap these inside square brackets and quotation as they have a hyphen. So to add a method, we should do so inside the component and outside the return statement. So here we can say if props.isRemove is true, we should return this button, which has a minus sign. And if props.isRemove is removal is not true, we should or our app must return this button component or this button element. Here we can achieve functionality of the same code inside a single line of code by doing this one, button class name, and props.isRemoval. I have forgot what it's called for now, but I'll put it in on screen, and we can say if isRemoval is true, we are gonna have a minus button, and if it is false, we are gonna have a plus rendered inside the button. This has the same functionality as the code below, so we are gonna remove that for now. Next section is passing down search results. We need to go to our app.js file and import useState so that we can use state inside our app. Inside our app component, we need to set some hard-coded values which have name, artist, album. In order to save state, we should give the state a name. So here we are going to give it a name of search results, and followed by the search results method that we would call if we want to set the state to a new one. And here we are adding 2 objects, each having name, artist, album, and ID. So here we only added objects and not an array. Therefore, we were getting these errors. So what we should do is wrap them in an array, and after that, if we check our application, it would be okay, and the errors will be gone. If we reload our page, as you guys can see, the errors are gone. Okay, we are gonna pass the state of app component search results to the search result component. So here we are gonna import the search results component from our directory. So then the first letter is gonna be a capital letter as we set it before. Now we are gonna render the search results component and pass it the search results state. Passing down search results, we don't need to use props.searchResults because right now we are using functional components, and that was in class components. So here we are gonna give it a different name of user search result. After this step is done, we are gonna pass user search results from search bar to a TrackList component. Here we are gonna call props in order to be able to use the props passed to this component. Here we are gonna render the track component, the TrackList component. We are getting an error as we have not imported TrackList yet. So here we are gonna import TrackList from the same directory as we are, and we are gonna pass user search results to the track component through TrackList component. We are gonna give it a name of user search results again, and pass it props.user search results. In TrackList component, use the map method. Here we need to use a map method. First of all, we need to import the track component as we would be rendering it inside the map method. And we are going to use the map method on the user search results props passed down from TrackList. So here our map method is gonna render or return track components, and to that track components we will pass these track objects that we will receive from the app.js component. Here I'm showing you guys that we can do the same without using the return keyword. We just need to replace the curly braces with parentheses. So here inside our track component, if we go to our application right now, you guys can see that our tracks are rendered, but we are not they are not showing the names or the artists. So it shows that our track component is being rendered successfully. If we want to check it, we can copy these objects and the tracks will be added respectively. As you guys can see here right now, they are added as we copy the tracks. Let's parse the track itself and the ID of the track that we want to render. Here it says to set the track attribute to track and the key attribute to track.id. So here we are going to say track equals track inside curly braces and a key set to track.id, because React uses this to differentiate between different tracks. Each track would have a different ID, so therefore this is necessary. Now we need to render the track name and the track album and artist inside the track component. Here we are rendering the artist's name and copy and paste it here, the album as well. So now if we go to our application, here we have the name and the artist and album. So this whole code is for just one track component. So because we are using a map method, multiple track components would be returned inside the track list. The next section is implementing playlist. Eventually, we are going to create a playlist like this, which has some tracks, and we have an option to save it to Spotify. It says to add some hard-coded values for playlist name and playlist tracks to state in app.js. So here we can do that by giving it a name of playlist name and set playlist name, a function that we can call to set the playlist name. So the playlist name will have just one name and the playlist tracks are going to be an array of objects having multiple tracks. So we are going to give them different names to differentiate between the playlist markup data. Now we need to pass the playlist name and track from app component to playlist component. So here inside the app component, we are gonna render the playlist component, import it inside our app.js file, and pass the playlist name as playlist name and the playlist tracks as playlist tracks. Now we should pass playlist tracks from playlist component to the tracklist component. So now we would go inside the playlist component and render the tracklist component from playlist to the tracklist. So here we are going to use props in order to be able to access the prop pass down from app to playlist. Here we are going to pass that playlist tracks that we received from the app component. Right now we are not seeing anything, as it says it's having issues reading the map method. So the issue is that inside tracklist we are running the map method on user search results property, and we pass down from app.js a property named user search results, and from playlist it was named playlist tracks. So they have different names, so we can give them the same name. So we are going to change the name to user search results. And now if we refresh our page, so don't worry about these are just about the fonts. If we refresh our page, our tracks are gonna be rendered inside the playlist. So the reason they are being differentiated is because of their IDs. They have different IDs. So section 5 is adding tracks to a playlist. Here we are gonna write a method that would take a track argument and pass that track to the search results component state eventually. We are gonna use the track ID property to see if that track is inside our state or not. This is the ID that we are talking about. Our method is going to use this ID to check if the track is already inside our search results state or not. Here we are going to use the find method on search results and set the t is going to be representing the tracks, and check if t.id is equal to the track.id. So t is going to be the argument of the find method and track is going to be the argument of our add track method. If you guys are wondering, the extension that I'm using, tab9 extension, here we are checking inside search results. Instead, we should check inside the playlist tracks if the tracks are inside the playlist tracks state or not. That was a mistake there. We have corrected it now. So for now, we are gonna give it a name of existing track. We are gonna declare a new variable named new tracks. So if a track is not inside our playlist tracks, we will add that track at the end of our array of playlist tracks. These two are just variables. They are not performing anything right now, as they are not being used. We are going to write a conditional statement saying if existing track is true, meaning if a track is already in our playlist tracks state, we should log a sentence to the console saying track already exists, and if it is not, then we should set the playlist track to the new array of tracks. Now we need to pass add track to search results. We are going to give it a name of on add, pass the add track method. And we are going to pass is removal with a value of false from search results to the tracklist component. So inside our search results component, we are going to pass is removal and on add to the next component to tracklist. In order to get these pluses and minus signs, pass on add. Now we need to pass on add and is removal from tracklist component to track component. Inside track component, we are gonna add a new method named pass track. On add is the same add track method that we have inside our app.js component. We are gonna pass the track state that we have received from the tracklist components so that it sets the new state of our playlist tracks. Now we need to add an on-click property. Now we will go to the tracklist components plus button. As you guys remember from before, we rendered two buttons having a plus and a minus. So the issue with this code is that we cannot pass attributes to them individually. So therefore, we are gonna return them separately, the plus button and the minus button. So here, this is the code for the plus button, and this one is for the minus one. So the issue with our class name attribute is that we have not wrapped them inside curly braces and brackets. Track action class inside curly braces and call styles, followed by the class name inside brackets and quotations. So now we can add the on-click property on the plus button and pass the pass track method. Format your code, you can use the shift command F, and it will format your code for you inside VS Code. We also need to call the render action method at the end of our file so that we can get the plus and minus buttons inside our track components. Here I changed the name of the is removal. I had changed it before by mistake. Eventually we will add functionality to the minus buttons as well. If we have tracks that are duplicate, we will get a console.log message that says track already exists. So we know that our code works for now. The next section is removing a track from playlist. So we are gonna do the reverse of what we did with add track method. So inside our app.js, we are gonna create a method named remove track, which gets an argument of track, and we are gonna declare a variable that uses filter that removes the track passed to our remove track component or method. And after filtering it, we are gonna set the playlist to the variable of existing tracks. And now we need to pass the remove track method to the playlist component as an attribute called onRemove, passing it to the playlist. And after playlist, we need to pass it down from playlist to TrackList as an attribute onRemove, and pass the onRemove method that we received from track component, and pass is removal with a value of true down to TrackList. So we are gonna pass its removal with a value of true to tracklist. Pass on remove and is removal from tracklist component to track component. So we are gonna go to the tracklist component. We are already passing is removal. We just need to pass on remove so that our remove track component gets passed as well. Create a pass track component. We are gonna create a new method that will be used to remove a track from our playlist. Here we are passing the track that we want to get removed to the onRemove attribute that will eventually pass the remove track attribute inside our app.js. So in the track.js's minus button element, we are going to pass an onClick attribute and set it to pass track to remove. Now if we go to our application, so as you guys can see, the buttons are reversed. So the issue is that we are rendering the wrong buttons inside our track component. So here we are checking if is removal is true. We are rendering a plus button. Instead, we should do the reverse and render a minus. And if is removal is false, we should return a plus button. The same goes to the methods. We should also reverse the onClick methods that will be called on clicking those button elements. So now, as you guys can see, the buttons are working perfectly. Next section is changing the playlist name. So here, as we did before, we are going to create a method, and that method will accept a name argument and set the playlist name to the name passed to that method. For that, we need to go to app.js, create a new function named update playlist name, which accepts an argument of name, and then it will set the playlist name state to that name. After that, we need to pass it to the playlist component as onNameChange attribute. And after that, we would go to the playlist component, and then inside the playlist component, we are going to create a new method, which will be handle name change. And what this method will do is it will accept an event as an attribute, and when called, it will set the state to that event dot target's value. So here we can directly use object destructuring and extract the target from that object. So here we will pass the target.value to props.onNameChange, which will then pass it to the onNameChange method of our app.js. Inside the input element, we will pass it to an onChange attribute, which will call the method when any change takes place. In this section, we will create a method that will save the user's playlist, custom playlist to their Spotify account. We'll go to the app.js and create a function named or method named save playlist. We'll create a variable named track URIs and map the playlist track objects inside our playlist tracks state. After that, we will pass that method to the playlist component as an onSave attribute. And after that, we will use it on the save to Spotify button inside the playlist component. We will add an attribute of onClick and call the props.onSave method passed to the playlist component. In this section, we will set our search results state using the search bar. We will create a method inside our app.js component or file. Name that method search, which accepts an argument. And for now, we will just console.log the term inside our search. Now we need to import the search bar component and pass this method to the search bar component inside our app.js file. In search bar component, we will create a new method. First, we need to import useState so that we can have a state inside our search bar component, and name that we can name that state term followed by a setTerm method that will set the term state, and then we will create a method and name that pass term. We also need to pass a props argument to the search bar so that we can use the props bar. Inside the pass term method, we will pass the term state to the props.onSearch that we received from app.js. Now we will create a new method which will be handle term change, and this method will take an argument of target. Once again, we used object destructuring to extract the target from the event object. Inside the handle term change, we will call the setTerm method of our state and set the state of term inside our search bar component. Now we will add an onChange attribute to our input element and set it to call the handle term change method whenever a change happens inside this input element. So after doing that, we will add a button element and an onClick attribute to it and set it to call the pause-term method whenever that button gets clicked. In this section, we will create a method that will get the Spotify access token. After that, we will create some more methods that will send a search request to Spotify API and another method that will save the playlist to their Spotify account. First of all, we will create a directory named Spotify. Add the src directory. We will create a util directory first, and inside that util directory, we just need to add a spotify.js file. Inside the spotify.js file, we will create a JavaScript module and name it Spotify. And at the end, we will export that as well. Inside our spotify.js file, we will create a new variable and name it access token. We will create a method named getAccessToken. So what this method will do, whenever it gets called, it will make a request to the Spotify API and save the access token to the access token variable. So inside the get access token, the first thing that we need to do is check if the access token is already set. If that is true, we will return the get access token. And if the access token is not already set, we will get the access token from the URL. Since we are using the implicitly ranked flow, the access token is going to be returned in the URL. So this is the code that we will use to extract the access token from the URL. We will set it to a variable named token in URL. The other code that extracts the expiry time from the URL is going to be set to expiry time. If the access token and the expiry time are both in the URL, here we are using a conditional statement to check if token in URL and expiry time are both true. If that is true, then we will set them to the access token variable, setting the access token to the token in URL variable that we created earlier. And then we are also gonna create a new variable for our expiry time. And we will use the number function to convert the value from the regular expression to number. Now we will set the access token to expire at the time given from the Spotify API in our URL. For that, we will use the set timeout method of JavaScript and use it to set the access token to an empty string whenever the time gets expired. We will multiply the expires in variable to 1000 to convert it to seconds. Now we will clear the URL so that our method does not get the access token when it is expired. And basically this line of code is used to modify the browser's history, and it removes the access token and expiration time from the URL, and you guys will be able to see that in later steps. And at the end we will return the access token. So the last case is if the access token is not already set. Also, it is not inside our URL. Before we proceed, we will need to register our application. So to register your application, you will need to go to developer.spotify.com. At the dashboard, after signing up for your account, you will create app as you are shown on screen and set the redirect URI to localhost 3000. Tick the check marks and you have your application. So we will go to settings to get our client ID and set it inside our spotify.js file, create a variable for it as well. Here we are creating the client ID variable and setting it to the ID that we received from our application. We'll create the redirect URI to localhost 3000 as we have been provided here. Back in the conditional, we will redirect the users. As I was saying, if the access token is not already set and is also not inside the URL, so the last condition would be to redirect the users to their Spotify account so that they can log in or authenticate, and then we can get their access token. So for that, we will redirect them to this link. We will use string interpolation to set the redirect URI to our variable and the client ID to the client ID variable. So windows.location would be set to a link where we want our users to get redirected to. Now we will implement the Spotify search request, and we will be using the endpoint with the query type with the value of track, which will pass the term that we search for to this method, and through this we will make a request to the Spotify API, which in response will return a set of tracks in JSON format. We will give the method a name of search, accepts a search term. Inside the search, we will return a fetch method. The fetch method takes a link as its first argument and the headers to that request as the second argument. So we will interpolate the term argument at the end of our request to the Spotify API. So here, if we go to the developer.spotify.com, here we can see an example search request. Here we have at the end of our request, we have the type query, or it's an argument, the type argument to the request. And we also have a header of authorization, which is in the syntax of bearer followed by the access token. We pass our headers inside an object. The first key is going to be method. Here we are making a get request, so we will specify that. We'll call the get access token method, and inside the authorization, bearer followed by the authorization token. Now we will convert the return response to JSON. To do that, we will have to use the .then method, which takes the response as its first argument, and here we have to convert that to JSON by using response.json. Now we need to check if the JSON does not contain any tracks, then we just have to return an empty array. To do that, we will have to chain another .then method, pass in an argument of JSON response, and in the function body, we are going to check if JSON response is not true. If that happens, then we will just console.log a message saying that we have a response error. Now we need to convert the JSON response to an array of tracks. To do that, we'll have to return JSON response dot. We cannot use directly dot map on the JSON response, as if we see here on the Spotify documentation, sample response will have a lot of tracks, and inside each track we will have items. So each item will represent a single track object. So therefore we will need to use json.tracks.items.map. And inside the map method, then we can see that we have name and ID and URI and other properties. Inside the map method, we will have to, here we cannot just directly return an object because this has to do with the syntax of arrow functions in JavaScript. So therefore, we will have to wrap them in parentheses so that the map method does not interpret this curly braces as a code block. Now we have to set the other properties as well. After ID, we have name, set it to t.name. After that, we have artist, set it to t.artist. So here at the example search request in Spotify documentation, we can see that we have multiple artists for each track for some reason. So therefore, we would have to get the artist at the index 0 or the first artist in that array. So therefore, we will have to use the artists at index 0.name in our map method. After this, we will have to set the album name to t.album.name, and at the end, we have our URI, set it to t.uri. Now we have to import and use the search method from our Spotify component. So first of all, we need to import our Spotify module inside our app.js file. Here we have to specify the correct file location for our Spotify.js file. After that, we have to come to our search method and use the Spotify.search method here. If you guys remember, our search method was returning a promise. Here we are returning a fetch method or fetch API, which in return will return a promise. Here we can chain a .then method and pass it an argument of result. And now we have to call our search results method to set our search results state. Or we can leave the console.log for now. So now we need to check if our method is working correctly or not. If we click search, we should be getting, oh, we are getting an invalid redirect URI. We have a mistake here. Looks like, yeah, we have misspelled localhost. And now if we reload our page and search for a song, we should get to this page, which is asking us if we are agreeing to log in. Now we will be taken back to our jamming application with the access token and the URL. If we search for a song, we should get a list of song names, but for some reason we are not. In the console, we have an error message of 400, and it's pointing towards the Spotify.js file at line 42. Now, if we come to the line 42, we have our map method. So far, this map method looks good, and nothing seems to be wrong here. So just to check if we are getting the JSON response or not, we are going to console.log it here. And now, yeah, we have another error. It says we have an issue with the access token. It's not grabbing the access token. If you guys saw before, we were getting the access token in the URL. Here we have the access token being returned from Spotify, but it's for some reason it's not being grabbed by our application. If we try to get the access token from the second index of the token in the URL, Now we will not get any errors and it worked as intended. Now if we search for a song name, let's go for Alone. Now we get the correct access token. Let's close this console. Now we are getting a list of songs returned from Spotify. We can add or remove them to our custom playlist as well. Now let's get to the next section, which is saving a user's playlist. We will create a method named savePlaylist that will save the custom playlist of the user to their Spotify account. This method will accept an array of track URIs and a playlist name as an argument, and then it will make 3 requests based on those arguments. First, it will get the user's ID from Spotify API. The second request will be a post request, which will be made to create a playlist, which will return a playlist ID, and using that playlist ID. And the third request, this method will use the track URIs that it receives as an argument and create a custom playlist for the user. Now let's go to our spotify.js file and create a new method named savePlaylist that accepts 2 arguments, name and track URIs. The first thing that we will do is check if name and track URIs are true or not. Or we can say this will check if the method has arguments passed to it or not. If no arguments are passed, we will return nothing. Now we need to create 3 default variables: an access token variable, a header variable, and an empty variable for user ID. After this conditional statement, we will create those example variables. Access token, we will set it to call the getAccessToken method. The second variable is for the headers. We are going to just copy from the search method and post it here. We will update the access token to the one that has just been acquired. And lastly, we will also declare a variable for user ID. Now we need to make a request that will return the user's username. For documentation, we are going to go to developer.spotify.com, and under the users section, we have a tab of get user's profile, and it will return a detailed profile information about the current user. This is the endpoint, and it only requires an authentication header. Back in our Spotify module, we are going to return a fetch method underneath the user ID. If you guys don't know, the fetch method takes 2 arguments. The first one is the endpoint that we are making a request to, and the second argument is an object of headers that the request will need. And this object that we are passing as the second argument, this headers is the property of the object and the headers assigned to it. Let's make this header to differentiate between them. The value that we are assigning to it is the header variable that we have defined above, and it is set to authorization bearer and the access token. The fetch method will return a response that will eventually resolve to a response object. Now we need to convert the response to JSON. We can do that by chaining a then method and passing response as an argument and calling the .json method on the JSON argument. After that, we can chain another then method and set the user ID to JSON response.id. After receiving the user ID, we are going to make a post request using that user ID to Spotify API to create a playlist. If we come to the playlist section and create playlist tab, here we can see that we need to make a request to the users/user ID followed by the playlist endpoint. And below that, we have sort of a template for how to pass information inside the body of our request. After acquiring the user ID from the first fetch request, we are gonna return another fetch request using that user ID to create a new playlist in the account of that user. And as you guys saw before from the documentation page, we must also pass an object of headers and method type, and in the body we will pass an object having a property of name set to the name variable passed into our savePlaylist method as an argument. And this object needs to be converted to string format, hence we are using json.stringify. Here is a list of values that are gonna be returned from a response. And what we need is this ID, the ID of a playlist. First, we are gonna initialize a playlist ID variable. Now we need to convert the response to JSON by chaining a then method and passing it a response and returning a response.json, and then by chaining another then method we can set the JSON response.id to our playlist ID. Now we will use that playlist ID to make another post request by returning a fetch method. To find the endpoint that we need, we can go to the documentation page of Spotify, and under the add items to playlist, we can find the endpoint is /playlist/playlist ID and followed by tracks. Back in our spotify.js file, we are going to return a fetch method, pass that endpoint as an argument, insert the playlist ID by using string interpolation. In the second argument of our fetch method, we are going to set headers to the header variable method to post, and in the body we will pass an object having URIs set to track URIs passed into our method. We will need to use json.stringify to convert our object to string format. Here is an example of how we can pass an object having URIs and other values. Update the save playlist method to call the save playlist method from Spotify. So here in back in app.js, we will update our method. We already have imported the Spotify module. We don't need to do that. We can access the save playlist method by using dot notation and passing playlist name and track URIs. Here playlist name is playlist name state of our app.js file, and track URIs is using a map method to go over the list of tracks in our playlist tracks state. After we set the playlist name and tracks of the user's custom playlist, our save playlist method will set the playlist name to a default value, which is new playlist, and set the list of tracks to an empty array. After updating our save playlist method in app.js, we are going to come to our application and check if it's working or not. First, we are going to search for a song. After getting the authentication token, here we have a list of songs, so our search method works. Now we are going to see if our save playlist method works. First, we are going to add some songs to our custom playlist and give it a name of alone jamming, and clicking save to Spotify as the list of chosen tracks has been reset. Now if we go to our Spotify account, we can see our custom playlist. So let's quickly check this again with another song. This time we are going to check for faded, give it a name of faded jamming, and as you guys can see in our Spotify account, it is working. Now we are going to push our code to GitHub. We are going to open the terminal. We can do that by going into settings and command panel and typing terminal in there. We can also use the control plus backtick. In order to be able to push our code to GitHub, we need to be in a directory where Git is initialized, and we also have to be in the root directory of our project. In our instance, we have to be in the cc jamming directory. Here is what I mean by that. We have to be in a directory where Git is initialized. So to check if we have Git initialized in our directory, we will run the git status command, and we will have something like this, an output something like this. For example, move back a directory, and now if we run that same command, we will get a response saying not a Git repository. In some terminals, so here this is because of a theme that I'm not getting the main keyword. Let's open another terminal. Yeah, here we have the main keyword. Actually, main is the name of our branch that we are currently working on. If we check git branch, here we have our main branch. This is the only branch that we have. What I'm saying is in some terminals you will have a keyword indicating that you have Git initialized in your directory. Alright, with that out of the way, we can move forward. So in order to push our code to GitHub, we first have to stage files that we have made changes to. To do that, we have to run the command git add followed by a dot, and it will add all the files that we have made changes to, and here we have a list of them colored in green. After that, we can run git commit -m followed by a message. After that, we have to push our code. We can run git push -u origin followed by the name of our branch, which is the main. And we have pushed our code to GitHub. And now if we come to our GitHub page, reload our page, we have the updated files here. It's saying that the code has just been committed. Now we are gonna need to install Surge. As said here in step 91, we are going to run npm install -- global search. After installing search, in step 92, we need to think of a domain name. And according to ChatGPT, a domain name is a human readable address used to locate resources on the internet. So basically, it's sort of like a name for a web page, and each web page or website has a unique domain name. And we are going to think of a domain name for our website. It's going to be ciphersjammingproject.search.sh. .search.sh is necessary, and the first part can be whatever you want. Don't forget to add https:// followed by the name of your domain. You have to add it in your spotify.js file as well as in the redirect URI in your jamming application. Click edit, enter your redirect URI here as well. Once again, don't forget to add https at the start, and after clicking add, click save, and you're good to go. Now we are gonna go back to our terminal, run npm run build. After that has completed, we are gonna go to the build directory and running search. We are gonna type our domain name, which is Cypher's Jamming Project, wait for it to complete, and now we have our domain live. We can copy our domain name and go to a browser to check if our website is live or not, paste it in a new tab, and here you go. We are in our application. We're gonna search for a song, and it should take us, it should take us to Spotify for login. After logging in, we are going to be taken back to our application, search for a song, wait for the songs to appear, and choose from those songs and give it a name of Last Try, hopefully, and save to Spotify. And now if we go to our Spotify account, we should see our playlist. And yeah, here you go. Last Try playlist has been saved with the 3 tracks that we chose from the list of tracks. I hope you guys liked this video. If you guys did, feel free to like and subscribe, and see you guys in the next one.
Either way